Hi friends, welcome to Creative DIY Purpose. Today I have some thrift store makeovers and a trash to treasure project for you. This Tuesday I'll be posting a bonus video as a thank you to our almost 4,000 subscribers who have joined our creative community. It's so nice to have you here. So come on, let's get started. I picked up this oval picture frame at a local thrift store for $2.99. I gave it 2 coats of Rust-Oleum 2-in-1 spray paint in the color bright white. Once it was dry, I took some muslin fabric and put it underneath the glass. I wanted to see how it was going to look and if it would fit in there properly. I'll be printing a design onto the fabric using IOD stamps, and we are going to turn this frame into a little tray. I removed the glass and kept the cardboard support from the frame so that way I could see exactly where I needed to stamp. I did choose the rose toile stamp that I used in last week's video for the wooden basket. In case you missed it, I posted the link below. Along with that video, I'll also post a link where I go into a little bit more detail on how to print your own fabric using ink stamps. It's very easy and it's a lot of fun. Once the ink has had a chance to dry, I go over it with a warm iron to seal it in. So the inspiration for my projects and thrifted items today is a double strand of faux pearls that I picked up at a thrift store and a vintage doily that just has beautiful age to it. So for the trim on this piece, I took 2 different colors of acrylic paint. One was pearl, and then the other was just a light brown, almost like a cream color. And I'm going around because the circles on here remind me of a little mini strand of pearls. And I just wanted to give it a pop of color and a little shimmer. Around the edges, I did take a brush of just the plain white pearl paint, and I think that it helped bring out some detail in this piece. Next, I took 4 little wooden knobs, and I will link those below. They come in a set of 10, and they also come with the screws if you choose to use them that way. These are the feet that I put on the birdhouse a couple videos ago. Now I am making a major mistake here. I am using the E6000 glue, and I realized that this faux black velvet comes right off. So I figured I'd get a little bit more stability by taking it off and re-glue them directly onto the frame, and it'll be a lot more stable. Before I glue them on, I decided to give them a coat of some paint. I used the DIY vintage linen. Even though it's going to be a different shade of white than the frame, but I think it will complement nicely. And now once that's dry, I take some of that white pearl paint and brush it on here and there to add some of the shine, just like in a strand of pearls. My next project is taking an empty glass bottle. I don't have any of the clay molds, so I wanted to make some texture on this clay, and I think it turned out pretty neat. You could also use the edge side of the doily for a different look, or some leaves, keys, anything that would give you a really neat texture. You can straighten out the edges by using a cookie cutter. I actually decided just to leave it like this. I apply it on while it is still damp using E6000. While the clay was drying, I did keep it in a room where the temperature was moderate. In the past, while using clay, if it is very hot, like during summer, we just put a damp cloth over the clay to help prevent it from cracking. I do not show it in the video, but I went around the edges and just flattened the piece so it wouldn't be such a step up. And there you can see it around the edges. Now I'm taking some DIY paint in vintage linen. I'm just so in love with this color. It adhered beautifully. I did clean the glass jar first, rubbing alcohol. I did forget to mention that. The paint adhered beautifully. If you're concerned with your paint not adhering, you can always go ahead and give it 2 coats of spray sealer ahead of time. So I did something completely out of my comfort zone with this piece, and I went through with some antiquing wax after I applied a coat of the clear wax to give it an aged look, and then use some fine grit sandpaper for some distressing. I wanted to get that antique wax down in all of the little details of the doily. Then I take that same brush and just dab all around the bottle for a more even look. Because I had already applied the clear wax, it made wiping back the antiquing wax super easy. There's so many ways that you can design and create just from a simple glass bottle. I think it would be really neat to paint the bottle in a spring color and leave the doily white, or even paint the bottle white and turn that doily into a flower by painting some of your favorite spring or summer colors. I am going through and dry brushing on some of that pearl paint that I used for the previous project, just to give it a little bit of depth and shimmer. I then take the paintbrush and do the same thing using a dry brush throughout the whole entire bottle. Once that layer has dried, I do go over the entire bottle with some white wax. I let it sit on there for a few hours and then wiped it back. I printed some words out on cardstock. I'm going through with some thread and a needle because the hole punch was too big. That was nice though, because it allowed me to be able to position those tags any way that I wanted and have them stay in position, because it was so much more of a tighter fit than using the hole punch. I tied them along the top, and I found some vintage lace, so I'm going to add that around the top. You could use any type of ribbon or twine or even string if you wanted like a more rustic look. I added another type of vintage ribbon. Then I'm going to string just a few different random faux pearls that I found and tied them along the top, and glued some eucalyptus leaves and hot glued a fabric flower on top. So for our first thrifted item, we have this vintage sugar bowl from Indiana Glass, and it is in the willow clear pattern. There's several of them listed online, anywhere from $3 all the way up to $50. So they manufactured pressed, blown, and hand molded glassware for almost 100 years. From what I can gather online, this piece was made around the 1930s to early 1940s. Our next vintage piece is from W.M. Rogers. He was an American silversmith and watchmaker, and he went into business with both of his brothers and then later on his son. I believe it was in the early 1900s that his trademark and business were taken over by a larger company. It's interesting that we can still see some of the designs that he created. Next, we have these 4 little white dishes from Syracuse, China, which was formerly Onondaga pottery from Syracuse, New York. A lot of their dishware was for restaurants. And our final vintage piece is also another item from Syracuse, China. This cute little creamer pitcher. I think it's adorable. And these are really common to see in our local thrift stores. I purchased this candlestick holder for $3.99. It does have a small hole in the bottom, but that could be patched with clay or putty. I believe that the bottom part is some type of plastic, and then that center piece It actually feels like marble, but I'm going to assume that it's some type of high grade plastic. After I cleaned it, I applied 2 coats of the DIY paint in the vintage linen, and then I will cover the entire piece with the DIY clear wax. I will then apply some antique wax from Waverly with a stiff brush to try to get down into all of those little cracks and bring out the details. Then I go through with repurposing an old t-shirt that's cotton, and I'll go through and wipe it all back. Looking back on this project, I would have watered down the antiquing wax like I did in the previous project. I think it would have saved me a lot of time from wiping it back. I did want to bring out all of those little details along with giving this piece an age look. So the top part of the wax came off very easily. I did only apply wax to half of it at a time. Then once I got it wiped back the way that I wanted, I went and did the other side. So here I'm careful while the wax is still wet because I do want to leave it down in the creases, but I do want to get rid of some of the dark tint. This part did take me quite a while because I did want to pay attention to all the little details. When I got the piece just about how I wanted it to look, I did take a damp cotton cloth and just go back in a little bit of the areas that I felt were too dark. I then applied some of the Pearl acrylic paint, and I believe that's made by Folk Art. And I just dry brushed it on in some of the areas just for a little bit of the shimmer. And we'll be joining that piece with this round metal platter. So it looks like someone spray painted some white paint on, and there were some spots where you could still see the silver plating. And there's a slight dent right there on the side where I'm adding some of the antique wax. So I did the same process, added the DIY clear wax all over, and then applied some of the antique wax just to get down and try to add some more texture and bring out some of the details so it will look like it belongs with the candlestick. So again, just completing the same process that I did with the candlestick, only this didn't take me anywhere near as much time. So I joined the 2 pieces together with some E6000. I made sure that the center part where it's going to be glued did not have any wax or paint on it. So you'll have to tell me what you think about this transformation. And also, what thrifted item is your favorite? Is it one of the vintage ones or one of the upcycle projects? And let me know, what projects are you working on? I found a thrifted glass cake topper that I thought made a beautiful cloche. And I was thinking this would be a perfect place to display a collection of doilies. So I picked up this decorative wooden piece for $2.99 at a thrift store. Went ahead and I did spray paint this just because it was pink in between all of the little areas, and I was afraid that I was going to miss some if I tried to brush paint. I did use the Rust-Oleum 2-in-1, so it's the primer and the paint, and it was just 2 easy coats. Now I'm just going through with that same pearl and cream color paint, and I'm just lightly dabbing it on, sponge brushing it just lightly over the top. Am wiping back some of it because I just wanted to stick down in all of the details. So I didn't want it to have too much contrast, but I just wanted to bring out a little bit more of the detail. So I watered down some of that Waverly Antique wax, and it was just the right amount, not too much. I do wipe it back while it is still on the surface and still wet. And then the last step is to go through and just dry brush some of that white pearl paint in just some of the little higher areas. Friends, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you Tuesday for our bonus video where we are going to be repurposing some glass bottles and doing some trash to treasure DIYs. I will also be back here next Sunday. So have a super blessed week, and I'll see you soon.